So there's two major mistakes that I see um, adult child victims of abuse doing with their kids, or really any adults that were on the outside of like social circles when they were kids and younger. Anybody who's got trauma, anything where you're just sort of you're somehow on the outside of your kid community. Um, and so what I've seen are adults who are trying to live vicariously through their kids and groom their kids in the direction of their own interests. Um, and unfortunately, it is often in a direction where it doesn't lend the kids towards being able to connect with other children. It takes them outside of kid culture. And then the second thing I see parents doing, the second mistake they make, is feeling resentful when their kid is having an experience that, you know, that we wish we'd had, and then they don't appreciate it or they have no idea, how good they have it. And so letting that resentment bubble. I mean, it's okay to feel feelings and like, feel it, but letting that resentment bubble up and then you start saying like bitter things to your kids who, were children, just living their best little derpy kid lives. Um, so I knew a couple that were very alternative. So I'm very alternative adjacent. I'm adjacent to a lot of things, but so I'm very alternative adjacent. And I want to say this couple was like knee deep um, in more of a goth community. So mom was into like the goth stuff, and then dad was into the alternative like anime stuff, but not mainstream anime like Naruto, however it's pronounced. It was super niche stuff that there's no way other kids would have any idea about. So it became this like family bonding, family culture thing where it's almost, you know, you need to participate and be enthusiastic about the thing, even though and no one outside the family has any idea about it. In order to fully participate in the family, in order to receive like affection and positive regard and the love can feel conditional. Um, it's super easy for alternative people to go, hey, you shouldn't make your kids play baseball if they're not interested in baseball. But when it's flipped, it's really hard to go, oh, well, I'm a nerd and my kid does not have to be into all the nerd things that I'm into. So his father and I, we are nerds. We're different nerds. I'm like a Star Trek science fiction nerd. Um, I read a lot of science fiction, and Dad is more of a D&D and what is it? Like a PC gaming, and like MMOs and stuff like that. So we're nerds, but in different ways. But one of the important things has been to allow our son to experience his own interests and let him be pulled in directions without us sort of putting that out for him. So he does not have to engage in our interests in order to feel like a valued member of the family. Um, One thing I noticed is that when you are outside of kid culture as a kid, you're going to feel isolated. You're going to feel alienated. You're going to feel like no one understands you. And it's probably because no one understands you. None of your references are references the other kids know. And you don't know how to engage with them. You don't know how to play and interact with them. I want to say, I don't know why I always get so dry when I do these videos. Um, my son was I want to say 2. He was about 2, was just starting to get mobile, so maybe between 2 and 3. And I had this thing where I was like, I'm not buying brand name clothes, like it's a waste of money. I don't want to commercialize this childhood. I have very good reasons. And then I had to change my mind because what I saw was the kids on the playground would come together and the easiest way of connection for them was like looking at the other kid's shirt. So back then it probably would have been Paw Patrol and going, oh, Paw Patrol, I love Paw Patrol, I love Chase, and then suddenly they're besties and they're running off. And I realized I was depriving my child of a real opportunity to participate in kid culture, a real opportunity to feel belonging in all of the different situations in which he's going to be. Um, and so it was like, okay, I guess we'll spend this dumb money on on what I thought was really stupid. And I had to change my perspective on that. My dad was hilariously, it's so weird. Like if you look at his education level, it's kind of weird that he felt this way, but he was like, we're smart when smart people aren't interested in sports. And so I sort of had like internalized that a little bit. And then I watched my, child's father, like now my ex-husband, but my husband at the time, he just walked on to a volleyball team. And within 5 minutes, it's like friends. I was like, what the fuck am I looking at? I had never seen anything like it in my life. They just all it took was 5 minutes of good play, and suddenly it was like he'd always been around. Um, and it truly that moment is like burned in my brain. That truly was a life changing moment for me, and I was like, wow, my dad was wrong. This is, I mean, I had to take another look at sports and go, wow, leadership and cooperative, play and blah, 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 and go through all the things to really understand that it was something valuable. Um, anyway, so I'm gonna show you my kid. There's this thing that I think you can tell when kids are abused or they grew up really poor or what, like there's something in their face. You can tell adults who've had like a hard life too. Um, and when I go back and look at pictures of when I was a kid, I was like, oh, it was cute. But also you could kind of tell, like you could tell. So it's kind of surreal. I don't see it. There he is. Look at him. He's like, he just I would look at him like, oh my gosh, I'm raising this little like jock kid. Um, who apparently is popular at school. And he told me actually a couple months ago that he was popular, and I didn't want to ask any leading questions or make any kind of um, judgments or anything like that. I just, oh, really? How do you know? He said because all the other kids talk about me more than the other kids. And so then I was like, oh wait, is he like an annoying kid? And because I've got ADHD, so maybe he's an annoying kid. Like let me check him with his teacher. And she said, no, like he's mature, respectful, he makes friends easily, he's got lots of friends. And so I was like, whoo, okay. Versus me, I always had like one friend and we were like this, but I did not know how to interact with people that well, and I did not have friend groups. I always felt awkward, and I didn't know how to participate, and I would say weird stuff. Anyway, so watching him, just he he feels like he belongs everywhere he goes, and I worked very hard for that to be the case. But I can see the difference. It never occurs to him that he doesn't belong to a place. It never occurs to him that someone doesn't want to like hang out with him or see him. And if they're not down, he's like, okay, because in his world, in his experience, there's always going to be somebody else. Like he does not have a scarcity mentality around it. It's really cool. So I I feel that when parents, because they were so isolated in childhood, they can end up sometimes unintentionally recreating that. Someone made a comment in the subreddit once. Oh, was it in the subreddit? I forget. But basically, she said, I can't wait for my daughter to get older because I'm going to be the only one who understands her experience. I was so, I was so kind of concerned because you're assuming that your daughter is going to have an isolated social experience because that's the one that you had. And there was also that sense that she wanted that and that would be something they could bond over. And that mom could be there for her and in a way that her parents weren't. And so it was a subconscious like healing mechanism. But unfortunately, it's at the expense of your kid. So anyway, you know, like yes, we have our our interests and stuff, but our kids are their own people. And it's important to let them gravitate to the things they're naturally interested in, and also to allow them to participate in kid culture and to have knowledge of shared reference points so that they can communicate and interact with their peers. So that's my explanation for why my son owns so much Minecraft stuff. It's just like um, we have Minecraft Uno, so he took those cards to school. Anyway, and then the second thing, I think that's a shock for many child victims of abuse is like you go out of your way to create like a really wonderful experience for your kid because you want to give them everything that you never had, and love them so hard, and suddenly you have a kid because kids they don't have any idea, they have no other reference point or experience to compare it to. Like for them, this is their normal. Their set point is very different than, let's say, someone who's been a child victim of abuse. And then so they start complaining, and it's like, what, do you have any idea? Um, and it's funny when it's, when I was a kid, we had to walk through the snow uphill both ways, no shoes. It's not as funny when it's like, dude, you don't even know. My parents used to beat me black and blue or whatever. Um, there's a lot. If you look at estranged parents forums, um, a common complaint from these parents is they're like, "Oh, my kid's so entitled." And then they usually follow that up with like, "I gave him everything," and or her or whatever. And they didn't appreciate it at all. And I told them, like, I didn't abuse you. Like what I experienced was real abuse. And so they're getting told by the kids that they're being abusive. And the parents are like, I know because I have this other experience that's, maybe more extreme. Um, and so the better thing to do is to try and, I mean, it's fair to feel resentment, fair to feel the feelings, but to not let it bubble up and poison the relationship that you have with your kids, because your child's experience is not the expense of your own. They do not have to understand our experience to be, having their own valid experience. They're their own individual people, and we work very hard for them to have, hopefully, we work very hard for them to have wonderful, loving childhoods. And I think we can trust the world to expose them to the hard things, to the suffering, to the pain, to the stuff that's unfair. Um, and to just sort of relax about it. I remember, my son went through this period where he kept telling me I was really strict. He was like, "Oh, mom, you're like really strict." He doesn't do it in a mean way, but he had made it clear that's what he felt, and I was like, "Okay, well, thank you for letting me know. I disagree, but I can explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing if you want." And so his father started dating somebody else, and now they live together. They moved in together. Um, and my son came back and was like, "Oh, mama, I didn't realize. I don't think you're that strict. I think she's more strict." I was like, "Yeah, buddy." Um, the more exposure they get to their friends' parents, to sleepovers and all of that, um, the better of an understanding they'll have of how things can be different. So if we're doing a good job, if we're staying centered, if we're not taking our trauma out on our kids, we're just like this safe, grounded place for them to be, you can trust. They don't have to agree with you. You can trust that, at some point the penny will drop. And maybe it's like far in the future, who knows? But, it's okay. It's okay to just let it be and not poison the well with bitterness that they don't understand our experience, because truly we don't really want them to anyway. That would be horrible. And we shouldn't want them to repeat our experience, so to repeat our experience of isolation and um, outsiderness necessarily. So it can be very jarring to have to have a kid who seems to be everything that you're not or weren't at the time. Um, but that I think is a positive thing, or can be, um, if we just hold on to the truth. You know, we're doing right by our kids, and they don't have to know it right now, and they can complain because we all complain. Um, it's fine. If it gets annoying, you just say like, "Hey, that's thanks for letting me know. Uh, I think I'm good. I've got that info. I appreciate it. I'm gonna need you to pause now. But trust that I've heard that message. Um, so I mean, I'm not saying you have to listen to it all the time. Like, no. But if you've given them an opportunity to express themselves, and they just keep going, it's fair to be like, okay, we're done. We're done with that now. um, but hopefully this makes sense. And I'll talk to you next time.